We welcome you to another edition of Being Well Informed. My name is Claudia Barber, and I am your host of this podcast and YouTube version of Being Well Informed. I am pleased because we have a wonderful speaker on this fine day to talk about maximizing Social Security benefits, but most importantly, we want to talk about uh, uh, protecting IRA plus plans. That is one of our main goals here. And here to kind of share a lot about this is Aaron Skloff. Welcome to Being Well Informed.
Claudia and your guests, I sure appreciate you having me. I'm really looking forward to sharing some new information and maybe hearing some of your questions. And that way all your listeners can be even more informed.
Yes, yes, indeed. Tell us about yourself and how you got into this whole area of protecting IRA plus plans.
Absolutely. So after an extensive background working on Wall Street and then transitioning over to private wealth management, where we managed clients' portfolios for individuals, middle-sized companies, middle-sized not-for-profits, small-sized companies, small non-for-profits, we've realized that a lot of wealth is exposed to a lot of risks and taxes unnecessarily. So as a principal of Skloff Financial Group, which is a registered investment advisory firm acting in a fiduciary capacity for our clients, we've been able to develop strategies that optimize wealth, protect wealth, and optimize taxes. Of course, we always legally and ethically pay taxes. We just look to optimize them, not paying unnecessary taxes.
Well, I think you've got a lot of listeners' attention by that whole point of optimizing, and that's just so important.
Well, thank you so much, Claudia. I am looking forward to sharing some of these concepts with you.
Well, let's get started and talk about this law called the Secure Act, or Setting Every Community Up for Retirement Enhancement Act. Tell us more about that and what it means for us citizens and Social Security recipients or just retirees.
Absolutely. So the Secure Act became effective on January 1st, 2020. And what it was really doing was it was securing the government's coffers at the expense of the taxpayer. So it is setting somebody up for security, but we say it's setting up the government for security. So the Secure Act became effective, as I mentioned, on January 1st of 2020. The Secure Act brought the biggest changes to IRAs and retirement accounts since the inception of those accounts.
Mm.
And so what that means as it relates to retirement assets is, in particular, when somebody passed away and left retirement assets, they were received, the beneficiary received those assets and was required to start taking required minimum distributions from those assets over their lifetime. Prior to receiving those assets, the actual retiree was required to start taking withdrawals from their own retirement accounts beginning at age 70 and a half. Interestingly, the Secure Act changed that requirement of 70 and a half to age 72 for the original retiree, or maybe if they were already retired, they could have delayed taking withdrawals until 72. Again, prior to 2020, those who inherited an IRA were subject to those required minimum distributions, or RMDs, based on the life expectancy of the beneficiary, the person who inherited that IRA.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with the Secure Act, that was changed to 10 years. So
Wow.
instead of, let's say, an adult child who inherits an IRA at, let's say, age 50 or 60, who has a life expectancy of maybe 30 or 40 years ahead of them and was able to take those withdrawals from that retirement account over 30 or 40 years when they inherited that. Well, the Secure Act said, no, 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 no. The way that we, the government, are going to collect taxes on that money much, much faster is we're not going to collect it over the inherited IRA's 40 years. We're going to squeeze it down and collect that money over the course of 10 years. There is an exception for spouses. Spouses who inherit a retirement account from their deceased spouse are allowed to take it as their own retirement account, and they're allowed to withdraw based on their life expectancy, not the 10-year rule if they take it as their own. If they take it as an inherited IRA, which is required of non-spouses, we're now working with that 10-year window to pull that money out very quickly over those 10 years so the IRS can tax all of that money.
So this spouse exception came into effect in 2020?
Actually, very good question. That has been in place for some time. So the exception remained in place. I wanted to emphasize that the exception still exists prior to the Secure Act and post the Secure Act. But what's very important, and we'll see coming up in some of these slides, that there are big tax ramifications for the retirement account owner and their spouse and their heirs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So now how has the January 1, 2023 most recent act changed things?
It changed them in the fact that beginning January 1st of 2023, this year, there was a new Secure Act called Secure Act 2.0. And Secure Act 2.0 brought, again, big changes to IRAs and retirement accounts as a whole. There are a slew of changes. Many of them affect what are called employer-sponsored retirement plans, which we might generically know them as 401k plans.
Okay.
403b in the nonprofit world, 457b in the municipal and government world. A lot of changes impacted those types of plans, but in particular for the IRAs, which is oftentimes where that money goes when people retire or are approaching retirement, or maybe they have an account that they've rolled over from a previous employer. Many of these assets wind up going into IRA accounts. It doesn't change the requirements on employer-sponsored retirement plans if you're no longer with that employer and meet those requirements as it relates to age. One of those important requirements was a change from the requirement of a distribution from the revised age 72 with Secure Act to 73 with the Secure Act 2.0. Now, this may sound appealing on the surface, and for some people it may be appealing on the surface to be able to delay those withdrawals from what was 70 and a half to the revised 72 to the revised 73. But what's important to know is when you increase in age, the percentage that must come out of that retirement account increases each year. So if you delay the required minimum distribution, the percentage that must come out increases. As you increase the percentage that you must take out, the government increases the amount that they're receiving in taxes.
So is that what creates the tax bomb?
It does create a tax bomb, and there's multiple reasons why that happens. It's very dependent upon marital status. It's very dependent upon the size of the retirement accounts. It's very dependent upon other sources of income, and it's very dependent upon your heirs' tax status. But the Secure Act does create this tax bomb. It allows those RMDs to be delayed until age 73, which for some people is beneficial, but the RMD percentage and distributions increase each year. And the way the tax code works is the larger your income, the larger the percentage rate you pay in taxes. If you have a modest income, the percentage paid on that modest income is more modest. As your income grows, the percentage that you must pay in taxes increases. And so if only one spouse is ultimately alive, withdrawals from the IRA at that single tax filer bracket results in even higher taxes than if that person had a spouse and they were filing jointly.
So what's the rationale behind changing from the required minimum distribution to 70.5 to 72 to now 73?
Another good question. So the required minimum distribution is meant to reflect the life expectancy of the retirement account owner. And as life expectancies have gone up, finally the government has changed the required minimum distribution ages and increased them to reflect longer life expectancy. That's the premise behind it. What many people don't realize is the same way they methodically contributed towards the retirement accounts during their working years, the same should be true as it relates to optimizing the taxes and systematically withdrawing those assets from those retirement accounts, either when they retire, or maybe when they're semi-retired, or maybe when their income has declined a bit. For instance, some people are, let's say, on a commission basis, and as they're starting to slow down in their career, they're still working, but maybe the percentage that represents commissions of their total compensation used to be 90%. Well, maybe it's 50% now, and as a whole, their income's starting to ease down a little bit as they inch towards retirement. These kinds of strategies are a great way, again, to optimize those tax brackets. So that's the premise behind increasing the age on the RMD to reflect life expectancy. But what happens is the further you delay those RMDs, let's say till age 73, let's be practical, your life expectancy as you delay these could be shorter. We never know exactly when our time is up, not to be cruel, but we don't. And so if we delay those withdrawals from those retirement accounts, we run the risk that when we do start to take those out, the percentage is going to be higher, as stated by the tax code, but we also run the risk that maybe one of us passes away, leaving the other spouse as a single filer, and that can increase the brackets at which that single filer must pay taxes.
Very good. I understand what you're saying here. Now, tell us a little bit more about this 10-year rule when it comes to adult children beneficiaries liquidating the inherited IRA.
Absolutely. And may I just maybe address one more point as it relates to maybe how that singular filer or how those larger distributions affect other things? Yeah, great. So we talked about the taxes, but interestingly, larger distributions, such as delaying till 73, when the percentage that must be taken out at 73 is higher than the percentage at 72, or even the percentage at 69, which is an age even younger than what the previous required minimum distribution is. Again, these are required by law. Of course, you have access to take withdrawals prior to that. There are penalties prior to age 59.5, but after 59.5, there are no penalties. That withdrawal is treated as income. So if you delay too long, the amount that you have to take out could be a very large amount, so large that you could be subject to what is called IRMA. IRMA is essentially a penalty that Medicare places on you and requires you to pay a higher premium for your Medicare Part B premiums. That's correct. But I just wanted to clarify how it's not only taxes, it can impact the premiums that you pay for Medicare. To your question, If you inherit a retirement account and you are not the spouse, then you are required to complete withdrawals, not based on your life expectancy as the beneficiary, but based on the new 10-year withdrawal requirement. That retirement account must be liquidated in 10 years. And as you can imagine, many people are inheriting these retirement accounts from mom or dad while they're still working. In fact, based on the passing age of mom and dad, the beneficiary is still working, might be at the peak of their career. They might be in their 50s or maybe 60s. And that's when they're at their peak earning years in many cases, and taking those withdrawals, and they're treated as income, just like working more at your job or getting a bonus at your job. And that incremental income can be very detrimental to your tax filing and tax obligations.
Well, you've covered a lot here so far, and one thing I definitely wanted to talk about is this tax bomb. Can you give us an example?
Absolutely. So here we have an example of Bill, who's age 65, and his wife, Sue, who's 65, and they have a combined taxable income of $89,451. Interestingly, $89,451 is just the very, very cusp of the 22% joint filing marginal income tax bracket, meaning all the income below that is at a bracket beneath that. Actually, two brackets beneath that are 12% and 10%. I wanted to keep this little example nice and confined, nice and concrete here, so I just showed the impact of this. But the brackets below the $89,451 for the married filing jointly are less than the 22. This couple chooses to delay the required minimum distributions to avoid current taxes. And at age 65, they have that ability to delay until age 73 if they chose to. But in this situation, they're going to delay, and we're going to see the impact in just a little bit. When Bill and Sue are 73, they begin RMDs of $101,228. That's the dollar amount of what's required to take out of their retirement accounts. That additional income keeps them in the 22% joint marginal income tax bracket, because that additional $101,228 does not exceed the 22% bracket limit of $190,750. It keeps them in that 22% bracket.
Okay.
So the RMDs are required. Withdrawals in excess of the RMDs are allowed. So they could take more. They just want to be cognizant of how that's going to impact the bracket that they're in.
So what is the required minimum distribution in this scenario?
I can pull up that number, but I'm going to estimate that at age 73, it's probably something along the lines of about 5% of the value of the retirement account. And one might see that as a reason to not take more, because it's a modest amount and they don't want that additional income. But they may want to take more and take it at a level that allows them to receive that and be taxed on it, but do so while they're filing jointly. Because as you can see on this chart, which we'll see in a moment, that the amount of income permitted for a single filer is half that for a joint filer. So for instance, when Bill dies at age 74, for example, Sue must continue to take the RMDs because she's over the age of 73. And that RMD in that following year is a little higher. It's $105,245. But what happens, here's the bomb, it pushes her into the 32% single filer marginal income tax bracket. Not the 22 that she had when she was married, but the 32 that she now has. And so as a single filer, the dollar amount of taxes is almost 50% more on that required minimum distribution amount versus the 22% that she was paying on that required minimum distribution amount when she was married. Now she's paying 32% on that required minimum distribution. And we call that a tax bomb.
Okay. So let's switch the situation if Sue dies at 75.
Yeah, so unfortunately we all pass. For simplicity, I just wanted to show that if Sue were to pass at 75, well, now the person that's going to inherit this is not a spouse. It's her son, George.
Mm-hmm.
Well, George is doing pretty good in life. He and his wife both work. George is 50. He takes the first of his 10 required minimum distributions. Remember, he's not allowed to take it over a long life expectancy like mom or dad. He must complete his required minimum distributions within 10 years. And that required minimum distribution is $267,800. And what happens is that pushes he and his wife into the 35% bracket. I don't even want to talk about if George were single, but fortunately he's married and he's able to use the joint filer tax bracket, which allows him to have more income and still stay in a reasonable tax bracket. But when I say reasonable at 35%, that's still a tax bomb. Remember, mom and dad were able to receive those withdrawals from the retirement account at tax bracket 22, while unfortunately, George, who's very, very fortunate that mom and dad left him a nice inheritance, unfortunately, the government is taking more than a third of that away in the form of taxes.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot.
So to summarize that, we have a visual showing mom and dad, and they were paying that 22% on those withdrawals. And when George and his wife and his family inherit that, they're now paying 35%. Well, that's even more than 50% the dollars of taxes paid.
Understood. So what are the key things we should be avoiding when we're looking at the Secure Act 2.0 that became effective January 1, 2023?
Yeah. So one of the solutions around this is something called the Protected IRA Plus Plan, or
Okay. So that's the PIP.
That's the PIP. There you go. I don't know if you remember, there was an old band called Gladys Knight and the Pips.
Yes.
Okay. Well, this is the Protected IRA Plan. It's just one PIP.
Okay.
So the PIP can do a number of things. The PIP can cut taxes for the surviving spouse. We call that tax arbitrage, which is a legal way of reducing taxes for the surviving spouse. It can cut taxes for the surviving children. Again, we call that tax arbitrage, legally paying the taxes that we're required to, but not paying more than we're required to. The PIP can be designed to provide guaranteed lifetime income. It can create tax-free income on top of that. It can protect those assets from market losses, and it can protect those assets from the cost of long-term care expenses.
Wow, that's a lot. My goodness, you probably got everybody's ear open here and listening. To create tax-free income, protect from market losses. Yes.
It can do a lot, yes. And the reason that it becomes attractive is because we find the top 5 concerns of pre-retirees and retirees are, number 1, running out of money before running out of breath. Number 2, protecting assets from market losses. Number 3, protecting assets from the needs of long-term care, whether that's in a facility or your own home. Number 4, tax-free growth in assets, and tax-free income later. And number 5, leaving tax-free assets to beneficiaries instead of taxable assets, just like George and his family are receiving those taxable assets. George and his family could have received tax-free assets.
Very good. Very good. So you've shared a lot with us today. So, the retirement account planning that took effect, the 1/1/20 and after, you've really shared so much about that these programs and the Protected IRA Plus Plan. So, what does your company do in relation to creating a Protected IRA Plus Plan?
Yes. So the Protected IRA Plus Plan is a strategy. It has multiple components. It has multiple designs that can be customized for different people's needs. Some people have an emphasis on wanting a very high lifetime income. Some people are willing to trade off some of that very high income so they can leave an even larger tax-free inheritance for their spouse or their heirs or both. Some people want to be sure that they have a very large protection against long-term care expenses. So there's a lot of different scenarios that people want out of this strategy, which can be customized based on people's needs. And so we help implement this strategy. We implement the various components that are part of this strategy. I put together a little visual that shows an example of what this would look like. And I use an example of a 65-year-old male. And the 65-year-old male is looking at his retirement accounts and his pre-tax retirement assets that he's built up over the years. And he's saying, you know what, I have maybe $1 million of pre-tax retirement assets that I've saved in my IRA and my old 401k that I used to work with. I'd like to take some of that, let's say half of it, $500,000 of it, and protect that and be able to leave that tax-free to my family. But I'd also like to have some lifetime income to supplement my Social Security. Or maybe I have a pension, maybe I don't, but I'd like a little income as well, just to enjoy. So with this strategy, we take the $500,000 of pre-tax assets, we transition it into what is called a single premium immediate annuity. And a single premium immediate annuity has an abbreviation called SPIA, S-P-I-A, SPIA. The SPIA can be inside of an IRA, and inside of that IRA, the transfer from George's IRA at whatever firm he has or whatever bank he has that IRA in, transfers over into this IRA that owns a SPIA. That's a tax-free transfer. As long as it's moving from one IRA into another IRA, that's a tax-free transfer. And when it's inside that SPIA generates a stream of income. For instance, we can design that stream of income to be a lifetime income that can never be outlived. It can provide lifetime stream of income like Social Security. Social Security, of course, we know is not guaranteed. Social Security is very clear about this, saying, even on their statements, Social Security benefits are not guaranteed. The SPIA is guaranteed, and it can provide a lifetime stream of income, or it can be customized. We can design it so that SPIA can finish paying out the income over 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever the requirement is, whatever the best strategy is for the person and their needs. But if it were designed as a lifetime income, when we were looking at that little chart that I showed there, we show that 500,000. We show it going into the SPIA. The SPIA in this example is generating lifetime income. The amount of lifetime income that it's generating, and maybe we can just pull up that little slide there, please, if you have that in front of you.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So here this 500,000 is generating over $37,000 of lifetime income. And that over $37,000 of lifetime income is about 7.5% cash flow out of the SPIA. We assume that you have federal income taxes of 22%, like you would any type of withdrawal from an IRA. And we assume that you are going to protect that full $500,000, because not everybody wants to place $500,000 into a SPIA that may discontinue paying the cash flow when we pass away. So we take some of that $37,000 and we use something on the lines of $17,000 of it to replace that income with a life insurance policy that will pay, coincidentally, when you pass away, replacing the $500,000 that you've put into the SPIA. Even though we're replacing the full $500,000, we still have about $11,000 to just enjoy in retirement, use as a second source of guaranteed income. For those that are concerned about the policy being a life insurance policy and what happens if they need care before they pass away, they can have access to the full $500,000 of life insurance benefit in the form of tax-free long-term care benefits. So for instance, let's say before they pass away, they need $100,000 of long-term care. The policy will pay for $100,000 worth of long-term care. And when the person passes away, it'll pay the beneficiary $400,000 of tax-free life insurance. For those who are concerned about the life insurance policy potentially being part of their estate and taxable as part of their estate, the life insurance policy can be owned by a trust, an irrevocable life insurance trust, which would own the policy. And when the person passed, the life insurance proceeds would pay into the trust would pay the beneficiary. So we start with 500, we create a lifetime stream of income. The policy is protected from market fluctuations. The proceeds for the long-term care are tax-free. The proceeds for the life insurance are tax-free. And the $500,000 asset is replaced when the person passes away.
Wow, that's a lot you have shared with us, and extremely beneficial information.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Indeed. Yes, indeed. So to wrap this up, any closing thoughts that you have? Because, you really have enlightened us about this tax bomb, and the Protected IRA Plus Plan. Those are the key takeaways.
Absolutely. I would just say the Secure Act is meant to secure the government's coffers. It is at the expense of the taxpayer. Those who are going to be diligent and save towards retirement, they should also be diligent and pull those pre-tax assets out and do so in a methodically manner, and methodically do so that you optimize your taxes. The reason this is so important is that income can impact your Medicare premiums. It can act as a way to delay receiving Social Security benefits if you have a stream of income, to create that gap between, let's say, age 62 and age 70. Because if you can delay receiving Social Security benefits between age 62 and age 70, we have a whole analysis and run through examples of what that could look like. And this could be an excellent source of income to provide a source of income during that delay period. Again, the goal is to optimize taxes, protect the assets, and protect your heirs simultaneously.
Aaron, you are an excellent teacher. Thank you so much for being a part of Being Well Informed.
Claudia, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.